Thank you for having me and opening your home. And it's really amazing to see a lot of Jewish Iranian women around the table. Chaya is a sacred space for Jewish Iranians to experience meaningful connections and deepen their self-expression. And it was co-founded by myself, Farah Shmulian, and Dorsa Baruchin K. And the three of us are all Jewish Iranian women as well. So we gathered around a table like this 5 years ago and decided that, in a community that is so great at being resilient and being, just hospitable and is so great at sort of keeping Jewish traditions alive, there are also certain times in this community where we can feel like the conversations are superficial, or we feel pressure to conform to a certain ideal or way of being. And what we really wanted to do was we all in our own ways sort of realized that we wanted to create a movement in the Jewish Iranian community where we can begin to have deeper conversations about stigmatized, taboo, controversial topics in a safe and productive and meaningful way. So for myself personally, about 10 years ago, when I was born and raised in LA, I was born, all my friends growing up were Jewish Iranian, and I felt a lot of the wonderful things about our community, but I also felt, like I said, like this pressure to sort of show up a certain way and meet certain ideals in the community, or keep the conversation surface level, or I was told all the time, don't trust anybody, or you have to be careful what you say or how you act, and it became too much. And so what I decided to do was to sort of run away to New York and, see if I can find something else. And I did. I found a community of women who were so compassionate and so open-minded and so vulnerable about anything. Every topic was on the table, and we were all very growth-oriented. And I said, when it was time for me to move back to LA, I have to have a different relationship with the Jewish Iranian community. And that's exactly sort of the values that we've created this community off of, is again, compassion. How can we be less judgmental? How can we allow ourselves to chew on new ideas? How can we begin to share about ourselves in a safe and brave way about what's really going on in our homes and in our minds and in our hearts? And so we decided to, it started out being a women's organization for the first 3 years, and then the men kept knocking at our door and being like, what is this? This is really cool. What are you guys talking about? What are you doing? We want to be involved. So we started Dinner with Strangers, which takes place twice a month, and it's where we hand select 5 women and 5 men, which all of our attendees are referral based, or they apply to our program. And we get together and we talk about important topics in the community that aren't always talked about. So whether it's mental health or gender roles or dating or breakups or, fertility, just different things that need to be addressed. And so it's been just growing and growing, and it's become bigger than we can imagine. We've done over 40 events on Dinner with Strangers only in the last 2 years. And we hope to do another 24 in this upcoming year, and we need support in sort of making those events happen. Each one takes place in a Jewish Iranian person's home, so there's an opportunity for the community to also give back to its members, and people sort of have expressed that they feel more connected, they have more meaningful friendships, they have the possibility of, meeting a partner on the foundation that is authentic, and business relationships as well. So for example, we have someone who came to one of our events and was involved in technology as his work, and he sort of met someone on that night. We had the topic of career and purpose, and so we talked a lot about what are the pressures that we feel around the types of careers that we're supposed to pick in this community, whether it's being a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, and how can we sort of break out of that and do what feels truly authentic for us. And so that night he actually switched over into interior design, and with one of the other people who were at that event, he ended up designing all of that man's dental practices, like all of the interior design for his spaces. So he's now sort of in his authenticity. We have somebody else who was a pharmacist, and she came to one of our fertility events, and now she's a fertility educator on social media and is creating her own wellness space around fertility. We have, myself. I'm currently like seriously dating someone that I met through one of our events. So it's a lot of ways to meet people in different contexts and different, levels of your life. And we bring in each event is not just like an open table of like, okay, tonight we're talking about career, what's going on. It's very much facilitated from the beginning to the end. I'm a psychotherapist as well, so I run, group therapy and I have a private practice, and so it's sort of a boutique practice on the side, and a lot of the elements of what we're using in that space are coming into Dinner with Strangers in a sort of a fun and much lighter way. So it doesn't feel like everyone is just, opening a can of worms. It's very contained, it's very safe, and there's a set of questions that we go through to get people to sort of begin to challenge what are the norms in our community and what really feels aligned and fulfilling for them. So that's the spiel, and I'm happy to hear any questions and answer any ideas.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the funding isn't for the actual dinner, it's for the person that facilitates the...
So yeah, it's to be able to create our programming and to be able to sustain our programming. So as you can see, we're doing about 60 events a year, and we went from sort of starting this as the three of us were co-founders and volunteering.
24? 2 times a month.
24 for Dinner with Strangers, but for the other events on that page, we have another 35 events that we're doing a year within those other categories of events.
Yeah, Women in Purpose, New Mothers Club.
Yeah, exactly. So I've kind of taken on the role of executive director, and again, we're, starting a podcast. We're doing a lot of different things to get, different speakers out there, highlighting different people in the community who are doing amazing work and want to come back and sort of share it with the community.
Do you have a website?
Yeah, ChayaCommunity.com.
When you say handpick, how do you handpick, and like how many applicants are you getting about?
Yeah, so we have 2,500 people sort of on our list, of our email list of that can potentially get an email for an event. But it started out with the three of us, we created a list as the co-founders. Now we have a board of about 12 people who also have nominated, so our list grew from there, and we let our attendees know at the end of our event, if you know of someone who would appreciate this sort of environment or conversation, and sort of wants to elevate, their consciousness in the community, please send us their email and we'll add them to the list. If someone isn't nominated, then they would reach out to us either through our website or through our Instagram, and we would send them a follow-up email of a few questions about what their interest is and how they've sort of overcome their own challenges in the community and why they want to attend dinner.
It seems pretty selective though, from who actually gets to go to dinner, right? Because you have a lot of members that don't ever get to go.
I think what we do is we prioritize first timers. So if you have come to a dinner before, we send it out to a certain sector of our list, and if they've come to a dinner before, then we hear back from everybody, and then we respond based on who hasn't been to a dinner before, because we want to make sure everybody gets to experience what's happening. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you think that what Chaya is doing, and specifically Dinner with Strangers, is playing a role in Jewish continuity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, there have been relationships that have been built outside of these dinners. Once people meet in this context, they're meeting under a different context than if you met at a wedding or at a gala or at a baby shower, where the expectation isn't to be as open or authentic. And so when you start the foundation of a relationship off on that note, there's a lot more just openness and authenticity off the bat. So those relationships, we believe, are more susceptible to lasting and creating families or business relationships or friendships that will actually, continue. And we've sort of seen it as an indirect result of what we're doing, but it's become a huge focus of how do we create this more and more, We don't want people to feel, there's so many organizations like that, and God bless them, but that focus on, are politically focused or matchmaking focused and religiously focused, and that's great. But what we really want to focus on is getting people to look at themselves and look at their passions and their desires and their, preferences or their likes and their dislikes, getting a sense of who they really are so that they can enter their relationships with anybody else from a more authentic place. We hear all the time in this community, like, it's fake, or I feel guarded, or I can't be as comfortable as I'd like to be, and sort of like, I think a lot of people leave our events feeling relieved and inspired and excited to continue to be a part of this community instead of, like myself, sort of running away to New York or running away to somewhere else or marrying someone, out of the community because they felt like they were an outsider or they felt like there were parts of them that didn't feel safe to come out.
That's really important.
So it's for single Persian Jews, right?
So-
For dinner with strangers.
No, actually we haven't specified. We do have mostly singles coming to our events for dinner with strangers. For other categories of events, sometimes we have events for like our parents' generation, into mingling with our generation and sort of bridging that gap. But for dinner with strangers, it is mostly ages like early 20s to early 40s, and the people who have naturally gravitated towards our events are single. But we have had people who were in relationships come to our events as well. Because it's dinner with strangers, like if someone asks, hey, can I bring my girlfriend? We say no, because we do want to keep it as much as possible. Like you come in with the vulnerability of, I don't know anybody here. Or I might know somebody here, but I didn't come in with that safety blanket of like, oh, this is my go-to person and we're gonna stick together.
And because it's so intimate, are you like handpicking who you think would sit at a table well together?
Yeah.
In some way?
Yeah. It's not so much handpicking like who would sit well at a table together. It's more of like, how is this person inspiring? How is this person, whether it's their sort of like their strength or their humor or their sense of their sense of grace, like there's something about them that felt magnetic, and that's why, they're there. And yeah, there are also people who come in, it's a small community, sometimes I'm like, I don't know about this one, and they come in and they shock you because you've seen them under the context of the community and what the community and the culture sometimes looks like, and then you invite them to have a deeper conversation and they surprise you, so it's really special.
And then, sorry, is it?
Yeah.
I know it's like Persian directed, but
Yeah.
what if it's like someone who's Sephardi but not Persian or
Yeah.
Ashkenazi?
Yeah, so that's been a big question, and we've been getting a lot of requests from, Jews outside of the Persian Jewish community, which is why we started Chaya Plus. So that's also one of the new programs on our list, where we want to start bridging the gap between different Jewish communities and become one stronger, unified Jewish community. As you can see, we have, sometimes when you go to an event, you see, the Ashkenazi Jews are in one corner, and the Sephardi Jews are in one corner, and the Persian Jews are in one corner, and no one is like mingling as much as I personally would like to see. So we decided to create sort of this same sort of makeup of let's openly talk about what are our differences in our communities, what are our strengths, what can we learn from each other, and how can we come together and be a stronger, unified Jewish community. So yeah.
Okay, so this will be our last question before we're done with this segment.
Are you on social media or is it just the website?
Yeah, so we have an Instagram and Facebook page, and it's at Chaya_community.
I encourage everyone to check it out. Okay, I do have one more question.
Yeah.
Do you, as far as like education, like at dinner with strangers, do you have, depending on the topic, a guest speaker
Yes.
to kind of inform or like add? I'm sure it's not like, is it like lecture style? No.
It's not
Just, like,
lecture
chime
style, it's conversation based, but like I said, so I'm at every event and I use a lot of like psychotherapy exercises and background to like make up the content. We also, every event that we have, I sort of check in with my board about the topic. And so each topic is based on something that's a need in the community that isn't being addressed. And then different people on the board who have different backgrounds professionally will come together and create what would create the most meaningful content. We also do collaborate a lot with other organizations like Bite LA, for example, or JQ, so they can bring in their expertise as well. And that's in order, I'm not the pro on everything, and so I have my things that I love to talk about, and then we have different speakers coming in and sharing, what is their expertise and what can they teach us about how we can all, again, like one of our 4 core values is growth, so how can we grow? Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Nice to meet you too. If you have any questions, the email is at the bottom of the sheet.